This set of folding tables is a custom order, and that's what we're going to be working on today. So first we start off by planing all of the boards down to thickness. So next thing I did was I used this jig to cut a straight edge on all the boards, and then I used that as a reference and cut the opposite edge. And I used 3/8 inch dowels to secure the top together. So I'm just using my jig here to get a center point for the first side that I'm going to use. And I used the bottom as the reference here. So I just measured from the bottom. Then I transferred that over to the other side, drilled those holes. And this is just, I'm doing two tabletops at a time. And so this is the one that I'm doing exactly the same as the first one. Now I'm just using some pre-made packaged dowels there for a reference, and I'm cutting my own. They're 1.5 inch in length, and I cut them down, and then I'm gonna round them over on the sander here, just to make sure that I have a good reference to get those into the slots here. So I'm going to glue up all the edges. I'm going to glue up the dowels and everything. Like I said, I'm doing two tabletops at a time. So glue them together, and then I just put all my cawls on there, and you'll see I'll clamp this down really well. And I have found that with my climate and everything, I wait an hour and then clean up the glue. And next day I came down and took all the clamps off, and I'm going to show you my out of view tabletops there. Then I'm going to rip the pieces for the legs here to about an inch, and same thing, I planed those down for a little bit over 3/4 of an inch. And not sure if you notice here, I completely missed that I didn't have my riving knife in place, and it's a good opportunity for me to tell you to make sure that your safety equipment and everything is ready before you start cutting. So now I've got that knife in there, and I'm cutting those legs to final length. I did 28 inches on the legs. And you see, because I didn't have that riving knife, I got some really nasty burn marks on there, some 60 grit sandpaper, and that took care of it. Here I just used a 1 inch diameter circle and marked those, and now I'm just taking them to the sander and rounding those over. I also used that same little 1 inch template for the tops here, and I did go with a different wood. This is oak, but it's pretty heavy, and I wanted to go with something lighter, so I did end up switching to something else for the tops. And I did a 1/4 inch round over on the bottom and a 3/8 inch round over on the tops. It did that same 1/4 inch round over on all of the table legs here too. And I snugged all the legs together for a 120 grit sanding, and you'll see I'll kind of flip them over, do all the sides, and then I got the ends with just a piece of sandpaper. And for the brace between the inner legs, I did a 2 inch high brace there. And you see I'm just switching out the blade from my ripping to my crosscut blade. And I'm going to cut them down to 13 inches. And while I am at it, I had the dowels for the top piece here. You'll see me cutting a little bit, but it's kind of hidden with the camera angle there. But those are all cut to 13 inches because what I'm doing here is a 1/2 inch deep mortise, and I'll cut the tenons here on my my homemade router table. I don't have a dado insert for my new table saw, so I'm just using this. If you haven't seen, I did have a video on how I made my old table saw into a router table. So I'm just using a stop block there and cutting all of those to be a 3/8 inch thick tenon on those. Just doing a dry run test fit and sanding down all of the rough edges here. Now on the top, with the same side as the mortise there, I am cutting a 1/2 inch deep and 1/2 inch diameter hole for the top dowel. And halfway through on the opposite side, to be securing the outside legs, I am doing a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch hole because I'm putting some roto hinges. If you saw, I did a little test fit on those. And now I'm going to go ahead and rip all of my braces for the top that will be underneath the tabletops, and we'll get to those here in a little bit. For the pieces that are going to secure the table legs onto the tabletop, I did 11 inches, and then for the front and back stops, I did a 5-inch length. And those all same thing, just get a little round over smoothing on the belt sander here. Now each of the pieces that's going to secure the legs to the tabletop, I'm drilling a 1/2 inch deep and 1/2 inch diameter hole, and I did switch to the Forstner bit. Just it was a little easier to get those holes in properly. And now the top of each of the outside legs are getting the same depth and diameter, getting those ready for those roto hinges. And I secured all the pieces to the tabletop with dowels, so I'm marking those on each of those pieces there. The front and back stops are just getting 2 holes, two dowels, and then the side pieces that secure the legs on are getting 3. And you see here I'm just using a 3/8 inch. I did 3/8 inch for I think all of the dowels on this one, and I'm just drilling for those dowels right now. And I'm using the same jig that I did for the tabletops. I'm going to put a link to that in the description below. I really like that jig. It's inexpensive and it works very well for what it's designed for. Now I set my depth stop because the center hole for those longer pieces are going to get a screw in there. So I just did a 3/8 inch, and then I just set the depth a little bit. Then I used a centering bit for that middle. Now you see I'm testing my screw out here, make sure it's going to work and make sure it's going to go into the top long enough that's going to secure it down. And now we're going to start staining. The stains were picked out by the customer, and I really like the way it came out. We did a spiced walnut for the top, and the legs and everything got an espresso finish. And the espresso is actually a water-based here, so I did not show it, but I actually pre-raised the grain by getting all of those pieces wet first, and then sanded everything down with a 220 grit sanding. Now I'm just using a spray lacquer for the legs and everything. I took this out to my woodworking trailer to do all of that. That's where I'm doing my finishing. And if you see, because I did get some spray and everything in the holes, I just have my little Dremel tool that I cleaned up everything with, and now I'm doing a dry fit. Everything's looking good, so I'm doing my glue up on the inner leg pieces here. That's that little bottom cross member, and then the top dowel that I was talking about earlier. A little thumbs up means that we are nice and square. Same thing, I'm going to clean out those all the connections with a little Dremel tool here, and these are going to be the roto hinges, and I'm using some CA glue to secure those in. I'm not sure if wood glue would have been better because it's just, the wood on wood connection that I want to go for, but I did use CA glue, just making sure that that's not getting into any of the pieces that are going to need to rotate, because I am using the roto hinges. So I don't know, maybe you can leave some comments below in the comment section and let me know if you've had any experience with this, what you used, and if you used wood glue, what works best. So now I'm just taking that all apart, making sure that everything's looks good, and I'm going to connect my outer legs to my inner legs. Same thing, just some CA glue with those roto hinges there. And those are going to be the top pieces that are going to secure the legs onto the table there. Same thing, just a little CA glue. And those are the front and back stops. I do have a little piece of wood at the bottom there, a little caul to keep that from marking up the top. Got that in about a ½ inch from the edge, and doing my 3/8 inch dowel. Glue those up. Same thing I did, I cut those on the table saw, rounded them over, and you'll see just kind of securing those in. And you'll see the mallet that I'm using is actually the one that I made for my Christmas tree. I did a video about how I made that, using that for these, but it is pretty soft. So I did find that it works really well, that when I'm done, I just sand the end of that down and it's ready to go again. It's nice and flat. So I am waiting. I waited for these to dry up, for all the glue to dry. Now I'm just using a flush cut saw just to cut the excess dowels off of there. The leg pieces, or the side pieces are getting, I think it's about a 3/4 inch depth in there. You see, I found the best way was to secure that center one down, a little CA glue on the screw, secure that down, and then I can insert my other, my outside dowels. And I don't think I showed all of the sides here, but I just did the other side exactly the same as the first one. And I'm going to take this time, ask if you like this video, please give me the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you can follow what we're doing here. So I just did a little plug for that center piece. I rounded over by hand, and I'm just going to set that in. Same, just waiting for the glue to dry, and use a flush cut saw, cut all those excess dowels. And each of those just gets a little sanding, makes it nice and smooth on there. That's just a sanding pad that I use. I really like just those nice little pads there. And a little stain on each of those. I don't show it, but I do add some finish onto all of those as well. And this little guide piece here is just another piece of oak. I'm using my countersink bit. I could not think of the name of that thing for a second there. And a little CA glue, just make sure that that doesn't go anywhere. It's one of the few times I'll use screws on a project, but I use them when they're necessary. And it's necessary here. So just using some screws there, secure that down. And the finishing touch is just going to be a little felt pad here. Couple things, it covers those screws, but more importantly, it will protect anything so they can lean it up against a wall or something without it scratching anything. And there you go, 2 tall and 2 short tables, and thank you for watching.